Sit your ass down before I add contempt of court to your sentence. Judge Raymond Harrison leans forward, eyes boring into the black man standing in shackles
Order
before
in the
him.
court. You are found guilty
Stanford
on all
degree,
charges, and I am recommending
cybersecurity
the
expert.
maximum sentence.
Impressive
Your Honor,
resume,
with all
Mr.
due
Carter,
respect,
but you're
you have
still
the
just
wrong
another
man.
thief in an orange jumpsuit. Elijah Carter stands perfectly still. Your Honor, I said, sit down. Harrison's hand slams the bench. You stole $750,000. You betrayed every employer who trusted you, and now you want mercy? He laughs, cold, bitter. People like you damage your entire community's reputation. 15 years federal prison. Maybe that'll teach you some humility. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Elijah slowly sits, his face unreadable. But here's what Judge Harrison doesn't know. The man he just destroyed has a secret that will end his career. And in 72 hours, Harrison will realize he convicted the wrong person. 3 months earlier, Elijah Carter's life shattered in a courtroom that looked exactly like every other federal courtroom in America. Polished wood, American flag in the corner, the seal of justice mounted on the wall behind the judge's bench. Except there was nothing just about what happened there. The charges were simple on paper: wire fraud, embezzlement, theft of $750,000 from Catalyst Financial, a mid-sized investment firm where Elijah had worked as a senior cybersecurity consultant. The prosecution's case seemed airtight. Bank records showed transfers from company accounts to offshore holdings bearing Elijah's name. Digital forensics traced the transactions to IP addresses linked to his work computer. Email chains appeared to show him authorizing the movements of funds. District Attorney Monica Reeves stood before the jury, her voice steady and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a complicated case. The defendant, Elijah Carter, had access. He had an opportunity. And most importantly, he had a motive. A lifestyle he couldn't afford on his salary alone. She clicked through a presentation. Photos of Elijah's modest home, his 10-year-old sedan. Then, suddenly, images of expensive watches, luxury hotel stays, international flights. The evidence will show that Mr. Carter lived beyond his means. And when the bills came due, he stole from the people who trusted him most. But here's what the jury didn't know. Judge Raymond Harrison had already decided Elijah's fate before the trial even began. Harrison had a reputation. 15 years on the federal bench, known in legal circles as a law and order judge. Conservative media loved him, the kind of judge who didn't coddle criminals, who believed in harsh sentences and personal responsibility. But the numbers told a different story. In cases involving black defendants charged with financial crimes, Harrison's conviction rate was 91%. For white defendants facing identical charges, 29%. Black defendants in his courtroom received an average of 8.2 years longer sentences than white defendants for the same crimes. These weren't accidents. They were patterns, and patterns reveal intent. During Elijah's trial, Harrison's bias showed itself in 1,000 small cuts. When Elijah's public defender, an overworked woman named Sarah Carter, who'd been assigned the case just 2 weeks before trial, tried to present her opening statement, Harrison interrupted her 14 times in the first 10 minutes. "Counsel, get to the point." "Ms. Carter, this court doesn't have time for theatrical speeches. Move along, counselor. We've heard this story before." But when D.A. Reeves spoke, Harrison leaned back in his chair, nodding along, occasionally making notes. No interruptions, no impatience. The prosecution called their first witness, a digital forensics expert named Dr. Robert Klein, a man who'd testified in dozens of cases, always for the prosecution, and who charged $500 an hour for his services. Dr. Klein explained, in careful technical language, how he'd traced the stolen funds. "The digital signature is irrefutable," he said, adjusting his glasses. "These transfers originated from Mr. Carter's workstation. The authentication codes match his credentials. There's no possibility of external intrusion." Sarah Carter stood for cross-examination. Dr. Klein, isn't it true that IP addresses can be spoofed? That authentication codes can be stolen? Objection. Speculation. D.A. Reeves didn't even stand. Sustained. Harrison's response was instant. Sarah tried again. Dr. Klein, did you investigate whether anyone else had access to... Objection. Asked and answered. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Carter. It happened again and again. Every substantive question Sarah asked was met with an objection that Harrison sustained. The jury watched. They learned what the judge wanted them to know. The defense had nothing. When Sarah tried to introduce Elijah's employment records, 12 years of spotless performance reviews, commendations, awards for excellence, Harrison cut her off. Counsel, this court is not interested in a character parade. The defendant's work history is irrelevant to whether he committed these crimes. Your Honor, it speaks to motive. I said it's irrelevant. Move on or sit down. Sarah's hands trembled as she shuffled her papers. She was young, inexperienced, facing a system designed to crush people like her client. But the worst moment came when she requested an independent forensic audit of the digital evidence. Your Honor, we believe the prosecution's forensic analysis is flawed. We request the court authorize an independent expert to... Harrison didn't let her finish. Motion denied. But, Your Honor, this is critical to... Ms. Carter, I've reviewed the prosecution's evidence. Dr. Klein is a respected expert. This court will not waste taxpayer money on defense fishing expeditions. Denied. Final. In the gallery, 3 men in dark suits watched every moment. They took notes. They made eye contact with each other when Harrison shut down the defense. One of them, a man with graying temples and the posture of someone who'd spent decades in law enforcement, leaned forward whenever Harrison spoke, his expression carefully neutral. Elijah noticed them. Of course he did. But he said nothing. The trial lasted just 4 days. In a case involving complex financial crimes, digital forensics, and $750,000, 4 days was absurdly fast. The prosecution presented 23 witnesses. The defense called 6, but Harrison sustained objections to most of their testimony, rendering them nearly useless. When Elijah took the stand in his own defense, Harrison's contempt was palpable. Mr. Carter, speak clearly. Enunciate. This isn't the streets. Elijah had been speaking perfectly clearly. He had a master's degree from Stanford. He'd presented at cybersecurity conferences. But Harrison wanted to remind the jury, mostly white, mostly middle-aged, that this defendant was different, other, less than. Mr. Carter, you expect this jury to believe that someone framed you? That they stole your credentials, used your computer, and made it look like you committed these crimes? Yes, Your Honor, that's exactly what happened. Harrison leaned back, a thin smile on his lips. How convenient. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. Given the complexity of the case, this was remarkably fast. Later, some would question whether they'd truly reviewed all the evidence. But it didn't matter. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing came 3 weeks later. Elijah stood as Harrison prepared to seal his fate. Mr. Carter, you had every advantage in life. Education, opportunity, a career most people would envy, but you chose to steal. You chose to betray trust. You chose to believe you were smarter than everyone else, that you could get away with it. Harrison paused, letting the words sink in. People like you make it harder for your entire community. You confirm every negative stereotype. You take opportunities that were given to you in good faith, and you squander them for personal gain. In the gallery, Elijah's wife, Nicole, gripped the armrest of her seat, tears streaming down her face. Their 8-year-old daughter, Maya, sat beside her, too young to fully understand, but old enough to know something terrible was happening to her daddy. I've seen 100 defendants like you, Harrison continued. Always an excuse, always someone else to blame. But today, accountability arrives. 15 years federal prison, No early release, no parole. Maybe that will teach you the humility your education clearly didn't. The gavel came down. Elijah's face remained calm. Too calm. As the marshals moved to take him away, he turned to look directly at Judge Harrison. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "you should have investigated more carefully." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat, Mr. Carter?" "No, sir, it's a fact." Bailiff removed the prisoner. As Elijah was led away, he glanced once more at the three men in suits. The one with graying temples gave the slightest nod. What no one in that courtroom understood, what Judge Harrison couldn't possibly have known, was that every word, every gesture, every moment of bias had been recorded, documented, cataloged. Because Elijah Carter wasn't just another defendant. He was the bait. And Harrison had just swallowed the hook. 2 weeks after sentencing, something unusual happened. Most wrongfully convicted individuals spend months, sometimes years, filing appeals, navigating bureaucratic mazes, begging overworked public defenders to take their cases seriously. The system moves slowly for people without power, without money, without connections. Elijah Carter's appeal was expedited in 14 days. The emergency hearing took place in the same courthouse, but in a different courtroom, this one belonging to the Federal Appellate Division. Chief Judge Carol Martinez presided, flanked by 2 associate judges. The room was more crowded than typical appeals hearings. Media had caught wind that something significant was happening. The 3 men in dark suits from the original trial were present again, now joined by 5 others dressed identically. And Elijah Carter walked in wearing something no one expected: a crisp white dress shirt, dark slacks, and an expression of absolute control. He carried a single leather portfolio, thin, professional, with an embossed eagle barely visible on the cover. Judge Harrison sat in the gallery, required to attend. His attorney kept whispering questions that Harrison waved away impatiently. "This is a waste of time," Harrison muttered, loud enough for nearby attendees to hear. Judge Martinez gavelled the hearing to order. "Mr. Carter, you've requested to represent yourself. Do you understand the risks?" Elijah stood. "I do, Your Honor, and I'm prepared." His voice carried an authority that made people sit up straighter. "Your Honors, my name is Elijah Carter. For the past 12 years, I have worked in federal law enforcement, specializing in financial crimes and public corruption." The room went still. 3 years ago, the FBI received intelligence that Judge Raymond Harrison was accepting bribes from private prison corporations, specifically targeting black defendants for maximum sentences and payouts. Harrison shot to his feet. "This is outrageous!" Judge Martinez's gavel cracked. "Judge Harrison, sit down. You will have your opportunity to respond." Elijah continued calmly. Traditional investigation proved insufficient. Judge Harrison was careful, so I volunteered to become the proof. He opened the portfolio, revealing documents stamped with FBI seals. "The crime I was accused of never happened. The $750,000 was FBI operational money. The evidence was manufactured by our cyber division. Everything designed to look authentic." He laid out document after document. The goal: give Judge Harrison an ideal target. See if he would convict an innocent man for payment. He did, eagerly. Now Elijah presented the real evidence. Bank records showing Harrison received $127,000 from Sentinel Corrections Inc. payment schedules aligned with convictions. $5,000 for every sentence over 10 years. Email chains between Harrison and prison executives. Subject lines: Q3 targets and performance bonus structure. Then a recorded phone call played through the courtroom speakers. Harrison's voice, unmistakable. "The Carter case is perfect. Educated black defendant. No media sympathy. Push it through quickly." Sheen. The executive, 15 years minimum? Harrison: "I'm thinking 15 to 20.
That's $75,000 for you, plus quarterly bonus." The recording ended. Silence filled the courtroom. Judge Harrison looked like a man watching his world collapse. "Your Honors, I'm not the only victim. We identified 14 other cases where Judge Harrison convicted innocent people. All black. All sent to facilities that paid him." He read names slowly. James Wu, 7 years. Keisha Monroe, 6 years. David Richardson, 4 years. With each name, he placed a photo on the table. 2 of Judge Harrison's victims committed suicide. One was my younger brother, Jordan Carter, convicted 6 years ago by a different corrupt judge. 4 years in prison. 8 months after exoneration, he took his own life. He was 31. Elijah's voice caught briefly, the first crack in his composure. "I can't bring Jordan back, but I could document Judge Harrison's corruption so thoroughly that no one could deny it." He closed the portfolio. "Your Honors, the FBI requests 21 days to present complete findings. The full criminal network, all co-conspirators, our prosecution recommendations." Judge Martinez exchanged glances with her fellow judges. "Mr. Carter, we are profoundly disturbed. How much evidence?" 300 pages, 22 months of investigation, 47 FBI agents across 8 field offices. An associate judge leaned forward. "What is your exact FBI position?" Elijah smiled slightly. "I'm a special agent, Your Honor. Public Corruption Unit." Technically true, just not complete. Judge Martinez studied him. "Motion granted. 21 days. Your conviction is stayed." She turned to Harrison. "Judge Harrison, retain counsel immediately. Marshals, ensure Judge Harrison and District Attorney Reeves remain available." 2 marshals moved toward the exits. Harrison found his voice. "This is entrapment. You can't—" "Judge Harrison." Martinez's voice cut like ice. "You're not in your courtroom anymore. And if half of this is accurate, you'll never sit in one again, except as a defendant." As the hearing adjourned, the men in suits approached Elijah. The one with graying temples extended his hand. "Clean work, Carter." In the gallery, Harrison watched. "Who are they?" he demanded. His attorney's face was grim. "Federal agents, senior ones." Harrison's eyes widened as reality sank in. The man he'd destroyed wasn't just an FBI agent. He was part of something much bigger. And the trap was only beginning to close. 18 months earlier, a conference room deep inside FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., held a meeting that would change everything. Elijah Carter stood at the head of the table, presenting to some of the most powerful people in federal law enforcement. Deputy Director, Section Chiefs, Legal Counsel. On the screen behind him, photos of Judge Raymond Harrison, financial charts, conviction statistics that told an ugly story. "Judge Harrison has corrupted his courtroom for over a decade," Elijah said, his voice steady. "Traditional surveillance won't work. He uses encrypted communications, shell companies, and careful intermediaries. We need definitive proof of intent." The deputy director leaned forward. "What are you proposing?" "I want to get myself convicted." Silence. "You want to serve time in federal prison?" The deputy director's tone was incredulous. 2 to 3 months maximum, until we have ironclad evidence. I've worked undercover for 8 years. This is what I do." "This is different, Carter. You're talking about a felony conviction on your record, which will vacate once Harrison is arrested. Sir, I've thought this through." What Elijah didn't say in that room, what he couldn't say without his voice breaking, was why this mattered so much. 6 years earlier, his younger brother Jordan had stood in a different courtroom, facing a different corrupt judge, convicted of a crime he didn't commit. Jordan Carter, a 25-year-old middle school teacher with a spotless record, sentenced to 8 years for armed robbery based on a false witness statement and a public defender who met him twice. Jordan served 4 years before new evidence exonerated him. By then, the damage was complete. His teaching license was revoked. His fiancée is gone. His apartment, his savings, his future, all destroyed. Elijah had been working a deep cover operation in Chicago when Jordan was convicted. By the time he found out and rushed home, his brother was already 6 months into his sentence. Elijah tried everything, hired private attorneys, pushed for appeals, used every FBI resource he could access without compromising his cover. It wasn't enough. Jordan was released on a Tuesday in March. Elijah picked him up from the prison, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed man who walked through those gates. They drove to their mother's house in silence. For 8 months, Elijah watched his brother try to rebuild, watched him apply for teaching jobs that were never called back, watched him flinch at loud noises, watched the light behind his eyes dim a little more each day. On a November morning, Jordan's landlord found him. Pills and a note that said simply, "I can't carry this anymore." Elijah took 2 weeks off work, organized the funeral, held his 6-year-old nephew, Jordan's son, as the boy sobbed against his chest. At the cemetery, Elijah made a promise to that little boy, to his brother's memory, to himself. This would never happen again, not if he could stop it. Now, 18 months into Operation Blind Justice, Elijah sat in his home office at 2 in the morning, walls covered with evidence. His wife, Nicole, appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee.
"You should sleep," she said softly. "Can't. The timeline's tight."
Nicole set down the coffee and studied the wall. Financial records, victim photos, recordings, transcripts, a spiderweb of corruption with Harrison at the center. "How many people has he destroyed?" she asked. "What can we prove?" 14. "But I think it's more. Much more." Nicole wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Jordan would be proud of you." Elijah's hand found hers. "Jordan should be here, teaching kids, raising his son, living his life." "I know. But you're making sure no one else loses their brother the way we lost ours." Their daughter, Maya, 8 years old, appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy, why are you still awake?" Elijah turned, pulling her into his lap. "Working on something important, baby girl."
Maya, the thing that's going to make you go away for a little while? Nicole had explained it as best she could. Daddy has to go on a special assignment, like an actor playing a role, but he'll be back soon. "Yeah, that thing." Maya touched the photos on his desk. "Are these the people the bad judge hurt?" "They are." "And you're going to stop him?" Elijah looked at his daughter's face. So much trust, so much faith that her father could fix broken things. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to stop him." "Good, because heroes don't let bad people win." After Maya went back to bed, Elijah returned to his work. He pulled up the FBI database, access granted only to senior officials. Cross-referenced Harrison's cases with prison industry payments, built timelines, verified sources. On his desk sat a photo of Jordan, taken a month before his arrest, smiling, full of life. Everything ahead of him. Elijah picked up the photo. "I'm doing this for you, brother, for everyone he hurt, for everyone he would have hurt." He opened a new file on his computer. Operation Blind Justice. Final evidence compilation. 300 pages. 22 months of work. 47 agents. Every fact was verified 3 times. Every recording authenticated. Every financial transaction is traced and documented. This wasn't just a case file. It was a weapon. And in 3 weeks, Elijah would use it to destroy Judge Raymond Harrison's entire world. 21 days later, the appellate courtroom was packed beyond capacity. News vans lined the street outside. This wasn't a routine appeal. Word had spread that something explosive was coming.
Judge Raymond Harrison sat at the defense table, flanked by two expensive attorneys. His face had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. District Attorney Monica Reeves sat separately, her own attorney beside her. The gallery was filled with faces Harrison recognized, faces he'd sentenced, families he'd destroyed. Chief Judge Martinez entered, followed by her associate judges and 2 federal marshals. Not standard procedure. Elijah Carter stood. Today, he wore a charcoal gray suit, American flag pin on his lapel. The transformation from convicted felon to federal authority was complete. Mr. Carter, you promised comprehensive evidence. We're ready. Thank you, Your Honor. 3 FBI agents positioned themselves at the prosecution table, surrounded by boxes of documents. For 22 months, the FBI has conducted the largest judicial corruption investigation in U.S. history. What I'm about to present is documented, verified, irrefutable proof. Harrison's attorney stood. Your Honor, I object. Sit down, Mr. Kozlov. You'll have your opportunity. Right now, I want to hear the evidence. Elijah nodded to an agent who wheeled forward a monitor. Let's begin with financials. The screen lit up with Harrison's bank statement. Over 12 years, Judge Harrison received $1.3 million from private prison industry entities. These payments followed a clear pattern. The screen showed a chart, red bars representing Harrison's convictions of black defendants, blue lines showing deposits 2 to 3 weeks later. 94% correlation. Every time Judge Harrison sentenced a black defendant to 10-plus years in a Sentinel Corrections facility, he received payment. $5,000 per conviction. Bonuses for sentences over 15 years. Next slide. Email exchanges between Harrison and Robert Vance, Senior VP at Sentinel Corrections. These emails were recovered through a federal warrant. Mr. Vance is in FBI custody cooperating. Elijah read from the screen. Vance to Harrison. Target rich for this quarter. Carter case plus 3 others. Payment schedule attached. Harrison responds, understood. Will prioritize accordingly. The courtroom erupted. Martinez gavelled for silence. Next email. Harrison to DA Reeves. Push Carter trial fast. Need conviction before oversight review. Reeves responds, jury selection optimized. Should be clean sweep. DA Reeves closed her eyes. But the most damning evidence comes from recordings authorized under a federal wiretap warrant. An agent pressed play. Harrison's voice filled the courtroom. The Carter case is perfect. Educated black defendant, solid middle class, Stanford degree, clean record, actually works in our favor. Another voice. Vance. How so? Because when we convict him, it sends a message. No amount of education saves you. Plus, assets we can seize. Adds to Sentinel's bottom line. Sentencing target? 15 minimum. I can push 20 if evidence plays right. These educated ones think they're untouchable. I enjoy proving them wrong. Vance laughed. That's $75,000 for you, plus quarterly bonus. Just make sure payment goes through usual channels. The recording ended. Absolute silence. Harrison had gone gray. His attorney's hands shook as they wrote notes. Elijah let the moment breathe. There's more. A second recording from Judge Harrison's chambers 3 days before my trial. Another click. Harrison's voice again, speaking with Reeves. Monica, I need the Carter conviction locked down. Reeves. The evidence is solid. What if he's actually innocent? A pause. Then Reeves. Is he? Harrison. Doesn't matter. He fits the profile. Exactly what Sentinel wants. Long sentence potential, minimal sympathy, assets to seize. Process him. And if his attorney fights? Harrison laughed. I'll handle the attorney. I always do. These public defenders barely know which case is which. Carter will be in prison within 60 days. The recording ended. Several people in the gallery were crying. Elijah turned to face Harrison directly. You said people like me damage our community's reputation. But you've been damaging lives, systematically, intentionally, for profit. He returned to the judges. Your Honors, Harrison isn't isolated. He's part of a network. 6 other judges, 4 prosecutors, 11 prison executives, 89 documented wrongful convictions across 5 states, 734 years of combined wrongful imprisonment, 12.4 million in kickbacks. The screen changed, a statistical breakdown. In Harrison's courtroom, black defendants charged with financial crimes, average 14.3 years. White defendants, identical crimes, 3.1 years. This wasn't bias, it was the business model. Next slide. 14 faces. These are Harrison's victims from this district alone. 3 are here today. 3 people stood. Dr. James Wu, Keisha Monroe, David Richardson. Dr. Wu, 7 years for medical fraud that never occurred. Lost his license, practice, marriage. Ms. Monroe, 6 years for theft she didn't commit. Mr. Daughter's adolescence. Mr. Richardson, 4 years for fabricated tax evasion. Each remained standing. 2 others aren't here because they're dead. One was my brother. Elijah's voice remained steady, but something shifted in his eyes. Jordan Carter, 25, sentenced to 8 years by a corrupt judge. The real perpetrator confessed 4 years later. 8 months after exoneration, Jordan took his own life. He turned to Harrison. My brother should be here, teaching, raising his son. But people like you, who treat humans as inventory for profit, destroyed that. Harrison's attorney stood. Your Honor, this is prejudicial. Sit down, counselor, Martinez said quietly. It has every bearing. Continue, Mr. Carter. Thank you. I want the court to hear from victims. Dr. Wu? Wu approached. I lost 7 years. My daughter was 9. She's 16 now. I missed her childhood. She calls another man dad. I can't practice medicine. License revoked based on crimes that never happened. Harrison did that for $5,000. Keisha Monroe came next. 6 years. My girl was 8. She's 14. She barely remembers me from before. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. David Richardson. My business collapsed. Reputation destroyed. Savings seized as proceeds of crime. I lost 30 years of work because I was the right skin color for Harrison's quota. As Richardson stepped down, Elijah addressed the judges. Your Honors, the FBI has arrested 11 individuals. 6 judges, 4 prosecutors, 11 prison executives face federal charges. This morning, Robert Vance and 7 others were taken into custody. He looked at Harrison. Judge Raymond Harrison, the FBI has obtained federal arrest warrants for racketeering, conspiracy, deprivation of civil rights, and 47 counts of judicial misconduct. 2 marshals stepped forward. Harrison went white. You can't. Stand up, Judge Harrison, the marshal said. His attorneys tried to intervene. Your Honor, this is irregular. Martinez's voice cut through. It's entirely legal. The FBI has presented sufficient evidence. Marshals, proceed. Harrison stood on shaking legs. Judge Raymond Harrison, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. The Miranda rights echoed as Harrison's hands were cuffed. The man who'd sentenced Elijah to 15 years now stood in chains. The power had reversed completely. But Harrison wasn't finished. Even in handcuffs, even with federal marshals beside him, his arrogance remained. Years of unchecked power don't disappear in a moment. This is illegal! Harrison's voice rose, shrill with desperation. This entire proceeding is a setup. He's just a rogue agent with a vendetta. He turned to the appellate judges, face flushed red. I demand you contact the FBI leadership. I want to know who authorized this witch hunt. He pointed at Elijah, hand shaking. What's your rank, Carter? Who do you report to? I want your supervisor here to explain how a convicted felon is running an investigation. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Harrison's attorneys tried to quiet him. He shook them off. Answer me. Some mid-level agent playing cowboy? You think you can destroy a federal judge without consequences? Elijah stood perfectly still, hands clasped. That slight smile returned. Judge Martinez raised his hand. Actually, I'd like to hear the answer as well. Mr. Carter, what is your exact FBI position? Elijah nodded. An FBI agent handed him a leather credential case. Your Honor, I apologize for the necessary deception. He walked to the center of the courtroom, opened the case, and held it up for everyone to see. My name is Elijah Carter. I am Assistant Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Criminal Investigative Division. The courtroom exploded. Elijah's voice cut through the chaos. I don't report to a supervisor in this operation, Judge Harrison. 14 field offices report to me. He pulled additional documentation from his jacket, official letterhead, seals, signatures. I authorized this investigation. I designed it. I executed it. And I ran it. From inside your courtroom, from inside a prison cell, from inside the system you thought you controlled. He stepped closer to Harrison. This operation had approval from the FBI Director and the Deputy Attorney General. I report directly to the Director. I oversee 537 special agents nationwide. Elijah's voice dropped, cold and final. I don't just run FBI investigations, Judge Harrison. I run entire divisions, and I just ran you into the ground. Harrison's mouth opened and closed. No words came. Your assistant director? You let me convict you? I didn't let you do anything. You convicted me because you're corrupt. Because you saw an educated black man with assets and couldn't resist the payday. I simply gave you the opportunity to reveal what you've always been. This was entrapment. No, sir. This was justice. At any point, you could have followed the law, ordered that forensic audit, reviewed evidence fairly, rejected the bribery. You chose corruption every single time. Elijah leaned closer. You said people like me damage our community's reputation. Turns out, people like you damage the entire justice system. Harrison's own words from sentencing, thrown back at him, landed like a physical blow. His legs buckled. The marshals held him upright. Elijah turned to the courtroom. Federal warrants have been issued for additional arrests. He nodded to agents positioned throughout the room. District Attorney Monica Reeves, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. Reeves stood, trembling, as agents approached. I was just following. You're a licensed attorney. You swore an oath. You knew exactly what you were doing. As Reeves was handcuffed, 3 judges in the gallery went pale. Judges Marcus Webb, Patricia Donovan, and Christopher Yang, you're also under federal arrest. Please stand. The 3 tried to leave. Federal agents blocked every exit. Within minutes, all 6 were in handcuffs. The courtroom that sent Elijah to prison now looked like a federal dragnet. Media cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Harrison stood destroyed in the center. Judge Martinez gavelled for order. Assistant Director Carter, the FBI has coordinated with this court? Yes, Your Honor. Chief Judge Morrison has been briefed. The U.S. Attorney's Office will file formal charges within the hour. Elijah turned one final time to Harrison. You asked who authorized this. The answer, everyone who matters. Because when a federal judge becomes a criminal, the entire system responds. Harrison was led toward the exit. As he passed Elijah, he whispered, I underestimated you. Elijah's response was quiet but clear. You underestimated everyone. That's why you lost. The doors closed behind Harrison. The courtroom remained in stunned silence. Elijah Carter, no longer a convict, no longer undercover, stood as what he'd always been, one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in America. The trap was complete. 3 days later, A formal federal hearing convened to address the full scope of the conspiracy. Chief Judge Carol Martinez presided over what was effectively a mass exoneration proceeding. The 14 victims sat together in the front rows, united. Harrison sat in the defendant's section now, wearing an orange jumpsuit identical to the one Elijah had worn. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Elijah stood in full FBI dress uniform, navy suit, badge displayed, authority no longer hidden. Your Honor, the FBI's investigation revealed a criminal enterprise operating 14 years across 5 states. What Judge Harrison did wasn't isolated corruption, it was systematic predation. The screen lit up with an organizational chart. Harrison at the center, lines connecting to 6 judges, 4 prosecutors, 11 prison executives, 7 corrections officers. 28 individuals participated. Total damage, 89 wrongful convictions, 734 years wrongful imprisonment, $12.4 million in kickbacks, $43 million in fraudulent asset seizures. Martinez leaned forward. Walk us through how this operated. Yes, Your Honor. 3 phases. First, identification. They targeted Black and Latino professionals with clean records and assets. Next slide, demographic breakdowns. 98% minorities. Average victim age 37. Average income $72,000. Calculated choices to maximize profit while minimizing public attention. Phase 2, conviction. Harrison coordinated with prosecutors to rush trials, suppress evidence, ensure convictions. He denied motions, sustained frivolous objections, intimidated defense attorneys. And Phase 3? Payment and asset seizure. Within 2 weeks of sentencing, Harrison received deposits. Simultaneously, victims' assets, homes, savings, businesses, seized as proceeds of crime. Then sold, proceeds split among conspirators. Elijah paused. They didn't just steal freedom, Your Honor. They stole entire lives. Martinez turned to Harrison. You have the right to address these allegations. Harrison's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client maintains these were errors in judgment, not criminal intent. Counselor, Martinez interrupted, your client received $1.3 million. Those aren't errors. That's a business model. The attorney sat. Judge Harrison, do you wish to speak? Harrison stood slowly, voice barely audible. I made mistakes. The system. Everyone wasn't, Elijah said. Thousands of judges faced the same pressures. They said no. You said yes, for 14 years. Harrison tried again. I'm sorry. To all victims. You're sorry you got caught, Keisha Monroe's voice rang out. She stood, tears streaming. You're not sorry for what you did. Martinez didn't reprimand her. Harrison collapsed into his seat. Your Honor, I'd like victims to speak. Dr. Wu? Wu approached, voice steady but pained. Harrison targeted me because I was successful. Thriving practice, family, respect. He took all of it. 7 years. My daughter doesn't trust me. My patients moved on. Even after exoneration, the stain remains. He did that deliberately, knowing I was innocent because I was profitable. Keisha Monroe spoke next. 6 years. My daughter was 8. She's 14 now. Courts gave me back freedom but can't give me back her childhood. Those years are gone. Harrison stole them for $5,000. David Richardson's testimony was brief but devastating. I built a business over 30 years, employed 15 people. Harrison destroyed it in 4 months. Everything is gone. My employees lost jobs. My reputation is still ruined, and he did it knowing I was innocent. One by one, all 14 victims testified. Each story has the same theme: targeted, destroyed, discarded for profit. When the last finished, Elijah presented final evidence. Your Honor, we recovered Harrison's personal journal. I'd like to read one entry from 2 years ago. He held up the journal. Quote, the key is finding defendants who won't generate media attention. Middle class, educated, respectable, perfect targets. They have assets worth seizing, and their communities won't rally. It's a gold mine if you work it correctly." End quote. Silence. "He called human beings a gold mine, Your Honor. He turned his courtroom into a hunting ground and people who trusted our justice system into prey." Martinez removed her glasses, face etched with disgust. "I've been a federal judge for 19 years. I've never seen anything this calculated, this cruel." She looked at Harrison. "You didn't just break laws. You shattered the public trust holding our entire system together." Harrison stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The man who'd wielded absolute power now looked small, broken, pathetic. Justice was no longer delayed. It had arrived. 2 weeks later, the federal sentencing hearing for Raymond Harrison drew a crowd unlike anything the courthouse had seen in decades. Every major news network sent crews. The gallery was packed with victims, their families, civil rights advocates, law students, and citizens who'd followed the case obsessively. Outside, protesters held signs. "Justice for the 89 and corrupt judges belong in prison." Harrison sat at the defense table, flanked by his attorneys. He'd aged dramatically. Hair grayer, face gaunt, shoulders slumped. The man who'd once commanded courtrooms with imperious confidence now looked defeated before sentencing even began. Judge Carol Martinez presided, her expression grave. This wasn't a routine sentencing. This was a reckoning. The U.S. Attorney, Jennifer Lawson, stood to present the government's position. "Your Honor, Raymond Harrison faces 67 federal counts, racketeering under RICO statutes, wire fraud, honest services fraud, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and money laundering. Federal sentencing guidelines suggest 45 to 60 years. She paused, letting the number sink in. Harrison is 54 years old. This is effectively a life sentence, and the government believes that is appropriate. Lawson approached the bench, her voice steady and clear. Your Honor, Raymond Harrison didn't just break laws. He broke the sacred covenant between the judiciary and the people. Every person who enters a courtroom trusts the judge will be impartial. Harrison sold that trust for $1.3 million. She turned to face Harrison directly. He targeted victims based on race. He fabricated justifications for excessive sentences. He coordinated with prosecutors to suppress evidence, and he did it all wearing a judge's robe, the very symbol of justice he was destroying. Lawson clicked a remote. The screen behind her filled with faces, 89 individuals arranged in rows. These are Harrison's victims, the 89 people whose lives he destroyed for profit. Collectively, they lost 734 years of freedom. That's not abstract. Those birthdays were missed, careers destroyed, children who grew up without parents, marriages that ended, dreams that died. Her voice hardened. 2 victims committed suicide after their wrongful convictions. Jordan Carter, 25 years old, took his life 8 months after exoneration. Marcus Williams, 32, overdosed 1 year after release. Their blood is on Harrison's hands. She displayed photos of Jordan and Marcus, young men, smiling, full of life in the before pictures. Then the after. Hollow eyes, broken spirits. Justice demands accountability proportional to harm. Harrison caused catastrophic harm across 5 states, 14 years, 89 lives. He deserves catastrophic consequences. Lawson returned to her seat. Harrison's attorney, Richard Kozlov, stood. His defense was hollow before he even began. Your Honor, Mr. Harrison is a first-time offender. He served his community for 23 years before these crimes. He's expressed remorse. He's cooperating with investigators. His family will suffer from his incarceration. U.S. Attorney Lawson didn't even wait for permission to respond. His 89 victims' families suffered too, for decades, while he was free and collecting payments. Kozlov pressed on, desperation creeping into his voice.
We ask the court for leniency, mental health treatment, possibility of redemption, a chance. Judge Martinez cut him off. Counselor, your client had 15 years to show remorse, to stop, to choose differently. He chose profit, every single day. Sit down. Kozlov sat. Martinez turned to Elijah. Assistant Director Carter, you filed a victim impact statement. The court would like to hear it. Elijah stood, walked to the witness stand. He wore his FBI uniform, every ribbon and commendation visible. But his face showed something beyond professional duty, personal pain held in check by discipline. Your Honor, Judge Harrison sentenced me to 15 years in federal prison. I served 63 days before this operation concluded, and he paused, choosing words carefully. Those 63 days gave me a glimpse of what my brother Jordan experienced. The dehumanization, the hopelessness, the knowledge that the system you trusted has betrayed you. His voice caught slightly. Jordan served 4 years for a crime he didn't commit. When he was finally exonerated, he couldn't rebuild. The damage was too complete. 8 months after his release, he took his own life. He was 31 years old. Elijah looked directly at Harrison. Judge Harrison, you didn't kill my brother directly, but judges like you, corrupt, prejudiced, cruel, you created the system that killed him. Harrison's head dropped. You had power to protect people. Instead, you hunted them. You said during my sentencing that people like me damage our community's reputation. But I've spent 12 years in the FBI protecting communities. You spent 15 years destroying them. Elijah's voice strengthened. You wanted to know what people like me are. We're people who refuse to let people like you win. He stood tall. I don't want revenge, Your Honor. I want accountability. I want Harrison to spend the rest of his life knowing that his victims are free, rebuilt, thriving. And he never will be. The courtroom was silent. Even hardened prosecutors looked moved. Elijah returned to his seat. Judge Martinez took a long breath, then fixed her gaze on Harrison. Raymond Harrison, stand. Harrison rose on shaking legs, his attorneys supporting him. I've been a federal judge for 19 years, Martinez began. I've sentenced murderers, drug traffickers, terrorists. None have betrayed public trust as comprehensively as you. Her voice was steel. You were given a sacred duty to embody impartial justice. Instead, you became the embodiment of corruption. You targeted vulnerable people based on race. You fabricated justifications for their destruction. You profited from their suffering. She leaned forward. Your crimes aren't merely against 89 individuals. They're against every citizen who must trust the courts. You've undermined that trust catastrophically. Martinez lifted the sentencing document. The law provides guidelines, but your crimes are so egregious, so sustained, so calculated, that guidelines alone are insufficient. She read slowly, deliberately. On count 1, racketeering, 20 years federal prison. On counts 2 through 90, civil rights violations, 25 years consecutive. On conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction counts, 15 years consecutive. She paused. Total sentence, 60 years federal prison. No possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Victims embraced, crying. The media scrambled to report. Martinez wasn't finished. You'll be 114 years old before you're eligible for release. You will die in federal custody. All assets are seized. $8.3 million in restitution to victims. Lifetime prohibition from any legal practice or public service. She looked at Harrison with something close to contempt. You came into this courtroom in a position of power. You leave as inmate 847293. That's justice. Harrison collapsed. Marshals held him upright. As he was led away, he looked at Elijah one final time. His lips moved.
I underestimated you. Elijah's response was quiet but clear. You underestimated everyone. That's why you lost. The doors closed behind Harrison. In the gallery, Keisha Monroe held her daughter. Dr. Wu wept with relief. David Richardson sat with his head in his hands, finally able to breathe. Justice, delayed, fought for, hard-won, had finally arrived. 1 year later. Elijah Carter still serves as FBI Assistant Director, but now he also leads the Judicial Integrity Task Force, a nationwide unit dedicated to rooting out judicial corruption. 200 agents, 50 states. We've identified 247 cases of potential misconduct under investigation. Elijah tells Congress in televised testimony, "The cancer runs deeper than we thought, but we're cutting it out." Congress responded. The Judicial Accountability Act of 2025 passed 3 months later. Mandatory financial disclosure for all federal judges, independent oversight boards, automatic review of sentencing disparities by race. Activists nickname it Jordan's Law. Elijah keeps a framed copy beside his brother's photo. The 89 victims are rebuilding. Dr. James Wu had his medical license reinstated. He runs a free clinic in an underserved community. I'm helping people again. That's what matters. Keisha Monroe reunited with her daughter. They're in therapy, rebuilding trust. Keisha started a nonprofit, Families of the Wrongfully Convicted. They meet monthly, advocate for reform, help others survive the nightmare she endured. David Richardson restarted his business with restitution money. He employs 23 people, many formerly incarcerated. Second chances are real, but they shouldn't be this hard to get. The victims received $8.3 million in restitution, plus $47 million from civil suits. But everyone says, no money returns what was stolen. Judge Raymond Harrison served 60 years at FCI Pollock, Louisiana, inmate 847293. The number his victims once wore. General population. No protective custody. Fellow inmates know what he did. His wife divorced him. His children changed their names. Former colleagues refuse contact, no visitors. He works in the prison law library helping inmates file appeals. Cosmic irony. The man who denied justice now helps others seek it. He'll be 94 at the earliest possible release. Most likely, he'll die in that cell. On a Saturday morning, Elijah visits Jordan's grave with his wife Nicole and daughter Maya. Maya places sunflowers on the headstone, Jordan's favorite. Uncle Jordan would be proud of you, Daddy. Elijah kneels, touching the stone gently. We did it, Jordan. We made it mean something. As they walk to the car, Elijah's phone buzzes. Text from his deputy. 3 more corrupt judges identified, Michigan, Nevada, Florida. The work continues. It always will. Because corruption doesn't disappear with one victory. It's a continuous battle requiring continuous vigilance. But now the system has people fighting back. This story, Elijah's story, Jordan's story, 89 victims who got justice, it's one victory in a larger war. The Innocence Project estimates 2 to 10% of all U.S. prisoners are innocent. That's 46,000 to 230,000 people, right now, serving time for crimes they didn't commit. Many are black and brown, many are poor, many lack resources to fight back. But Elijah's story proves the system can be beaten. That one person with power, purpose, and courage can dismantle networks of injustice. If this moved you, don't let that feeling fade. Like this video if you believe in accountability over corruption. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories of people fixing broken systems. Comment below. Have you or someone you know faced legal system injustice? Your voice matters. Hit that notification bell. Next week we're bringing another incredible story. A black woman detective framed by her own department. They thought she was just another officer to silence. They didn't know she was head of internal affairs, running a sting that would bring down an entire corrupt precinct. Racist police chief framed black detective until she revealed she's head of internal affairs. You won't want to miss it. Remember, systems stay broken when good people do nothing. Be the person who does something. Justice isn't a spectator sport. It's a calling. See you next week.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.